have on Make It Plain all this week as we celebrate Kwanzaa is the professor and chair of the Department of Africana Studies at California State University, Long Beach. He is the chair of the organization US, International Association of Kawaida Organizations, executive director of the African American Cultural Center and the Kawaida Institute of Pan-African Studies, co-chair of the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance, the BCCLA, the author of the following essays on struggle, position, and analysis, Kawaida in Questions of Life and Struggle, Ma'at, the Moral Ideal in Ancient Egypt, a study in classical African ethics, author of the Introduction to Black Studies in the 4th edition now, the Husia, Sacred Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, Oduifu, the Ethical Teachings, and he's working on another major publication, a major work on the social and ethical philosophy of our dear ancestor Malcolm X, entitled The Liberation Ethics of Malcolm X, Critical Consciousness, Moral Grounding, and Transformative Struggle. He is the recipient of numerous awards given to him by the National Council for Black Studies. This is no small thing. We've seen the struggle in recent years, the assault on our education and our right to teach Black studies and for young people to learn it. But he has been awarded, as he continues in that struggle, awarded with the Paul Robeson Zora Neale Hurston Award for Scholarly Work of African World Culture and the CLR James Award for Outstanding Publication of Scholarly Works that advance the discipline of Africana and Black Studies, and the Presidential Award for Exemplary Service and Outstanding Contribution to the field of Black Studies. And he's also the author of the definitive work by Dr. Molefi Asante himself entitled Maulana Karenga, an Intellectual Portrait. But he is here this week as the creator of the Pan-African culture holiday celebrated by millions around the world, Kwanzaa, and the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles. That's what Nguzo Saba means. And he's also authored the authoritative text entitled Kwanzaa, a celebration of family, community, and culture. We say, what's the news, Habari Gani, on this day of Ujamaa. Ujamaa, which means cooperative economics. It means to build and maintain our own stores, our own shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. Other folk do it, we can too. And so we say once again to Dr. Karenga on this day of 4th day of Kwanzaa, Habari Gani, Dr. Karenga, welcome back.
Ujamaa, Reverend Maximilian, thank you for the invitation. I'm always honored to come and share with you and your audience these beautiful principles that have been embraced by millions of Africans all over the world, throughout the world African community. One quick note, you said that I authored the book on me, but you meant Molefi Asante, Dr. Molefi Asante authored the book on Maulana Karenga, an Intellectual Portrait. All right. So the 4th principle, Ujamaa, cooperative economic, my book says, and I say all the time, is to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. This is the compelling call to practice the principle of shared work and shared wealth in the world. Think about that, shared work and shared wealth in the world. It begins with a call to build and maintain economic institutions, and by extension, engage in economic practices that address our needs and aspirations and represent our best values, Black people, our best values. And certainly the central value here are cooperation for common good and the collective sharing of that good. Again, the central values here are cooperation for common good and the collective sharing of that good. Now, the model which Kwanzaa raises and then Nguzo Saba teaches in this principle is the harvest, right? And in the whole of 7 principles, this is the harvest becomes the model and message. To harvest good, we plan together and then plant together the promising fields of our life and future together. We cultivate them together with love and care. We harvest them together with hope and anticipation of abundance. We joyfully share the good we have created, and we conscientiously set aside seeds of good for the future. That's the harvest, right? We plan together, we cultivate together, we harvest together, we share together, and yet we think of the future, setting aside seeds of good for the future. The ancient text said, I did good for my city. I did good for my family and my community because I knew those good deeds would be a storehouse from which young people would later benefit and they could draw from. Moreover, the principle of Ujamaa speaks to a sense of kinship, right? You know, and Mwalimu Nyerere said, I could have used a socialistic, but I wanted to use an African concept for African socialism, right? For cooperative economics. So he took the word family and made Ujamaa out of it, familyhood, doing economics as if we were a family. The principle of Ujamaa speaks to a sense of kinship. We must feel for each other and the world. So the root word is Ujamaa, it's Jamaa, which means family. Therefore, it urges us to engage, I repeat, in economic practices which recognize and respect our kinship with each other, with other humans, and with the world. That's an important thing, a kinship with other humans and with the world. But first, we got to have kinship with ourselves. Don't ever forget that. We don't overleap Black people. We start with Black people, right? And then we don't be narrow-minded. We don't pretend we're living in some isolated place. We live in the midst of the world. Thus, it urges us, this principle urges us to engage, I repeat, in practices which recognize and respect our kinship with other humans in the world. It thus opposes activity which exploit and oppress others and damages the earth. Furthermore, as a cooperative pursuit of common good, Ujamaa is profoundly concerned with an egalitarian distribution of wealth and good in the world, and with care for the poor and the vulnerable. The sacred texts of ancient Egypt, the Hosea, teaches us that, quote, we are given wealth so that we can do good with it, end quote. And the Odu Ifa, the sacred text of the Yoruba land, teaches us that, quote, anyone who cultivates the disposition for doing good, especially for the needy, this person in particular will never lack happiness. Thus, ethical understanding of our historical moral texts and the awesome insights of our honored ancestors urge us beyond the crass consumerism of the marketplace, the isolated individualism, and the market-driven madness of acquisitiveness, vulgar individualism, and posing as a substitute for actual and longed-for freedom. Sometimes people say, I feel bad, I'm going to go buy me something. That's a fake relief, right? We're not free because we can buy. We're free to buy because that's the way the market-driven society is set up, right? But guess what? It brings problems. It doesn't solve them. It brings problems. We have to build a context of shared work and shared wealth. So instead, we are informed by the ethical teachings of the ancestors that we're to find meaning in our lives by searching after ma'at, seeking to do good in the world, speaking truth, doing justice, opposing injustice, caring for the vulnerable, and being responsible to and responsible for each other and the world. And thus, in the sacred text of ancient Egypt, Hara says that I was a refuge for the poor, a raft for the drowning, a ladder for those trapped in the pit of despair. I was a shade for the orphan, a helper for the widow. He said, one was always able to call on me. I'm one who speaks for the wretched, an assister in fortune, and aids the oppressed by excellent service and deeds. And he finally said, I gave food to the hungry, clothes to the naked. And I'm one who removes pain and suppresses wrongdoing, and who sustains the aged and eliminates the need of the have-nots. And then he concludes, said, my reward for this is being remembered for my virtue forever and ever. That is to say, for the good I've done and attempted in the world. That is what we struggle for, a world where everyone can share good, where everybody has a right and access to a life of dignity and decency, food, clothing, pure water, right? Can you imagine that's pure water, health, housing, education, and even recreation, and the right to organize our labor, right? And a right to rightful treatment on the job and in separation, and the right to participate in any economic initiative we want, and the ability to do so. And so we talk about a new way of reimagining how we do economics with Ujamaa. But at the heart of it, this fundamental principle, shared work and shared wealth for all the shared goods in the world.
Y'all, Dr. Karenga I was talking to him the other day about being my elder, but all this energy he's giving, he's getting rougher every year, y'all. Y'all hear this? Plan and plant. Freedom is not our ability to buy. That's a false relief, folks. He said something. I hope you all are sharing these broadcasts with your friends and loved ones. A lot of you all call me and ask questions. What is Kwanzaa? How do we celebrate it? You're hearing it right here from the source. So please spread the word. We'll be back tomorrow with the principle of the day. Habari Gani. The answer for today is Ujamaa. Once again, Asante Dr. Karenga.
Asante to you. Much kind.